And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are talking the FIA in absolute crisis. People left, right and centre coming out of the woodwork to basically completely slag, well, not necessarily the organisation, but potentially the leader of the FIA, Mohammed Ben Sulayem. Can he survive this? I mean, as far as I'm aware, his position was untenable as of the beginning of this year, pretty much, but surely this is now the beginning of the end for the current FIA president, if all this is true. And why would people go out and lie? So, is it going to be bye-bye Ben? So this all came about because of a certain Robert Reid, who is the FIA Deputy President for Sport, and he resigned after a standards breakdown and falling out with Mohammed Ben Sulayem. This is decisions behind closed doors are being made, is essentially what he's saying, bypassing the very structures that the FIA exists to present, which is, let's be fair, a massive red flag. Here is his full statement here, which we'll most certainly have a look at. Okay, so his decision, he's basically said, after deep reflection, I've made a difficult decision to resign as FIA President for Sport. He said, I took this role to help deliver greater transparency, stronger governance, and more collaborative leadership. Now, over time, those principles have been increasingly set aside, and I can no longer, in good faith, remain part of a system that no longer reflects them. Stepping away was not easy. However, staying would have meant compromising what I believe in. This is about principles, not politics. And he ended by saying motorsport deserves leadership rooted. This is difficult. This is a tough pill to swallow if you're the leader of the FIA. Rooted in integrity, accountability, and respect for process. That's the minimum standard we should all expect and demand. And I mean, that is a massive, what Robert Reid is saying, that is a massive exclamation mark. Motorsport deserves leadership rooted in integrity, accountability, and respect for process. And basically saying that's the minimum standard. So quite clearly that's not happening at the moment within the FIA. So an absolute massive exclamation mark there. It's not good at all. Here's the main story from Sky. Essentially, Robert Reid, Deputy President for Sport, resigns after standards breakdown and falling out with Mohammed Ben Sulayem. A significant resignation of the FIA has become a major talking point. There we go. Resigns. And this is all that everyone's going to be talking about in Bahrain. Sadly, the FIA's Deputy President for Sport, Robert Reid, has resigned, citing standards breakdown in Formula One's governing body. Now, in the latest in a series of senior resignations at the FIA, and this has been over the last 18 months, Reid appearing to have fallen out with the president. Reid has been the Deputy President since Ben Sulayem, who is attending his first F1 race this weekend at the Bahrain Grand Prix. He was elected at the end of 2021. When I took on this role, it was to serve the FIA members, not to serve power. That's what Reid said, not to serve power. I mean, is he talking about Mohammed Ben Sulayem? I think he is. He says, over time, I've witnessed a steady erosion of principles we promised to uphold. Decisions are being made behind closed doors, bypassing the very structures and people the FIA exists to represent. My resignation is not about personalities, it's about principles. Motorsport deserves leadership that is accountable, transparent, and member-driven. I can no longer in good faith remain part of a system that does not reflect those values. Oh dear, Mohammed Ben Sulayem. I mean, surely this is the beginning of the end. And as we know, last year, several figures parted ways with the FIA, including its sporting director, its technical director, digital director, head of commercial legal affairs, governance, regulatory director, race director, the head of Women in Motorsport Commission, Secretary General of Mobility, and Director of Communications. Now, if you were like a Prime Minister of a country, let's say, hypothetically speaking, at that point, surely it would be untenable with all these people leaving and you'd have to resign. But no, not this guy. And And it's here, Ben Sulayem in the eye of the storm after last key resignation. This is from motorsport.com. Opposition against the president's governance style has exploded ahead of his re-election bids. Surely he cannot be re-elected. With the resignation of the FIA president, he's lost his most senior management figure, while criticism against his course of action has swelled to significant levels. I mean, it all restarted again towards the beginning of the year when that €10,000 fine for Adrian Formeau in the rally. Reid announced on Thursday that he was leaving with immediate effect. His comments echo criticism fielded by UK Chairman Dave Richards, we'll most certainly get into that in a bit, who wrote an open letter that the governance and constitutional organisation of the FIA is becoming ever more opaque and concentrating power in the hands of the president alone. Yeah, I mean, we mentioned, is the FIA becoming a dictatorship? Yes. In the way it's run, absolutely. You can't criticise them either. So both Reid and Richards were recently barred, and this is the other thing that's just absolutely disgusting. They were barred from attending a World Motorsport Council meeting over their refusal to sign a non-disclosure agreement as a stricter protocol imposed by the president. Richards characterised the move as a gagging order. Now, criticism of Ben Sulayem's management, as we know, is not new. Natalie Robin left her role last year after just 18 months over similar governance concerns. And following the resignations of, let's be fair, lots of people, it's not looking good for Ben, is it? Ben Sulayem, he's not shied away from controversies on a variety of matters. The focal point of opposition against his reign stems from his apparent move towards a blueprint of what critics have characterised as a more, authoritarian leadership style. An army of executives, officials and stewards have been since removed. Critics may prefer the word purged from their position following the intervention by the president, including longtime steward Tim Mayer, while Ben Sulayem also clamped down on other matters, including driver swearing. Why? When you've got so much wrong, why concentrate on wearing jewellery by drivers, and is accused of stalling the governance part of the new Concord Agreement? This guy... Criticism grew after the Assembly in Rwanda last year, where he amended statutes were voted through that effectively limited, and we did a story on this, limited to which extent the FIA leadership can be held accountable. That is all you need to know. It basically says we can do, it lessens the accountability for the head of the FIA, which is really bad. Which is really bad. George Russell has come out and said FIA disputes are going in an unstable direction. Grand Prix Drivers Association has warned that things seem to be continuously going in an unstable direction. Completely, whether you like George or not, completely agree with him. And it's not good at all. Now, George Russell was asked for his take on Reid's resignation, and he said, unfortunately, every time we hear some of the news from that side of the sport, it's not really a big surprise. So it's clearly a real shame to see. Someone who is very well respected within the sport has been there for so long. And he says, as we keep saying what's next, yeah, it's a shame to see. And hopefully we get more stability sooner rather than later. Now, Russell confirmed that Reid sent a letter to the F1 drivers explaining his decision, though they're yet to discuss it with him. Russell feels the drivers are now fairly powerless in a saga that's heading in the wrong direction, saying ultimately it's getting to a point now where things are happening so often as drivers. We all tried to get involved in the past, didn't make much headroom, and things seem to be continuously going in an unstable direction. I've got to be honest, we're getting to a point now where our actions are having a little impact on those guys, and we've got to trust in the teams in the Formula One to work with the FIA to come to a common ground. You could also, he says that, and I know it's easy for me to say it sitting on my chair. They can always say we're not driving. If they all clamp together, they're kind of screwed then, really, the FIA, aren't they? They've got to be held absolutely to account. And then Formula One's going to do something. So there is stuff you can do. The drivers have done it before. The problem is getting all those 20 drivers to unite. I'd like to think there's a chance. But yeah, all the rally drivers united, didn't they, by refusing to speak to the press over the swearing. That's certainly, again, something the Formula One drivers can do. So they can do something, George. I'm sorry. Now, this is the former FIA CEO speaks out against the leadership. And this was Natalie Robin, the lady we were talking about earlier. Served as the FIA's CEO until May last year before tendering her resignation. And she's now spoken out about the issues she saw at the governing body. She said the FIA have serious ongoing structural challenges and does not follow professional processes. Yeah, pretty much. It was announced on Thursday ahead of that obviously Robert Reid has resigned, which we all know about. And David Richards has got in as well, and he's continued his war of words. But Robin was the FIA's first ever chief executive, quit her job after just 18 months, a year and a half, following the resignations of other people. While at the time of her exit, she stopped short of explaining her reasoning. She's now, I said, people are coming out of the woodwork. She said, during my tenure as CEO, I worked under challenging circumstances to strengthen the Federation's governance framework and upgrade. I mean, yeah, all yardie-dar speak. It's operational transparency. But the resignation of the Deputy President of the sport clearly indicates, she says, they're serious, ongoing structural challenges. It's just all going to poo, isn't it? I mean, that's essentially what she's saying. When professional processes are not adhered to and stakeholders are excluded from decision-making, I think in relation to Mr. Richards not going to that meeting, it undermines the foundation of a strong organisation. And she said, I am saddened to see these developments as they threaten both the credibility and the long-term effectiveness of an important institution. Absolutely it does. Disappointing and inappropriate. Motorsport UK hits back after FIA response. I mean, this is David Richards. He's hit back after what was a disappointing response from the FIA to his complaints over the governing bodies. He's described as wholly inappropriate actions. And as we know, he wasn't allowed in that meeting, which we already spoke about. Richards called the erosion of accountability and good governance. It was one or two people banned, the other obviously being Robert Reid, who's now handed in his resignation. Richards responded by writing a strongly worded letter to the members of Motorsport UK, in which he criticised Ben Sulayem's distinct failure to meet promises, as well as the lack of autonomy. However, the FIA insisted the meeting was legitimate under the WMC guidelines. Well, they would, wouldn't they? They're being held by, I mean, you know, an authoritarian boss. An FIA spokesperson told PlanetF1.com at the time, as is routine for all organisations, the FIA implements procedures including non-disclosure agreements to ensure confidential relationships between all parties to safeguard information and protect our regulatory note. Richards basically suggested it was a gagging order, which I think it was too. Unauthorised disclosure of confidential information undermines our ability to... The problem is, this came out at a very, after a time where you were not allowed to criticise the FIA. I mean, it's always an authoritarian dictatorship government would act. The steps we've taken to preserve confidentiality have been overwhelmingly supported by a major of WMSC members. Don't see them coming out now, though, do you? Richards revealed Motorsport's UK legal team had written to the FIA, but they'd not. They had not yet to receive a response because they're rubbish. In my opinion, surely something is important than that. You need to respond to it quickly. That finally arrived on Monday. The FIA General Alberto Villarreal writing that there could be no reasonable objection to the FIA wishing to reinforce existing duties of confidentiality. But going on to speak about the FIA's lasting and positive legacy under their leader, Richards hit back claiming this guy, Villarreal, I'm sorry if I've got your name wrong, but he's saying this guy simply batted it away. Now, in a fresh letter to Motorsport UK members, dated on Wednesday, so the 9th, he added that he hopes that despite missing these material issues, we might yet have a sensible discussion with the legal counsel of the FIA and resolve these points. I don't think so, but I hope you do, though. Ben Sulayem, though, is also coming into the Bahrain Grand Prix weekend. Motorsport.com are also reporting Ben Sulayem's power play as F1's future on Concord showdown in Bahrain. The Concord agreement is this big agreement, this big contract that binds Formula One together with the teams and the FIA. It's kind of like how F1 works, and includes like who gets paid what, etc. With I believe it's also in there, and for example the funds of TV money and where it goes as well. So he's going to attend his first F1 race this season, and this week's Bahrain Grand Prix, where he's expected to become engulfed in speculation about the Concord Agreement. Known as it's a three-party deal between the sports teams, rights holders, and governing body that forms the framework of these regulations. The agreement defines how the sport runs. We talk about prize money, the framework of Grand Prix racing, and other commercial terms. And it expires at the end of this year. And the teams now include a new entrant for the 2020 Cadillac teams have agreed in terms with Liberty Media, who made the announcement on the eve of the season kicking off at the Australian Grand Prix that there's going to be an 11th Formula One team. Now, a statement released from F1 said that Formula One can confirm that all teams have signed the 2026 Concord Agreement, which secures the long-term economic strength of the sport, which is good. They've carried on saying Formula One has never been in a stronger position, and all stakeholders have seen positive benefits and significant growth, which is good. But paddock sources suspect the move had caught the FIA by surprise, with some predicting Ben Sulayem had anticipated the teams have dug their heels in search of a better financial deal. Now, in response to this announcement, the FIA insisted that their part of the deal was nearing completion. However, they've not yet to commit to the proposals. Can we have F1 without the FIA? Absolutely we can. But can the FIA have F1? Can the FIA not have F1? Well, the thing is, they cannot afford to. They would crumble absolutely as a governing body because so much of their money relies on Formula One. And Ben's made no secret of the fact that he's seeking a greater financial share for the organisation. I mean, he came out the other day saying, if you want permanent marshals, who's going to pay for them? But you're the governing body. Surely you. He has pointed to the cost of regulating F1 races, including increasing the calendar to 24 races. Ben Sulayem wants to invest in marshal training and develop a body of stewards. They already get a fair share of money. Maybe he's got a point. However, there is a fear that if he holds out for improved financial terms, it could cause a tense standoff with Liberty Media and the teams who are keen to get the agreement wrapped up. Now, the relationship between Ben and F1 has come under a microscope after Richards, the chairman of Motorsport UK, threatened to take legal action, as we all know about that. And Richards come out saying it's a distinct failure. The FIA have responded; it's not been good enough, and it's all potentially going to come to a head this weekend at the Bahrain Grand Prix. I think they need a new president. That's absolute from now. Surely Ben Sulayem needs to go. It is the beginning of the end for the FIA. Anyway, if you made it to the end, please, I need to find the right button, which I can't find. Where's the subscribe button? There it is. Subscribe. If you love motorsport as much as us, absolutely subscribe here at the Hot Lap. That would be fantastic. If you are already subscribed, just clicking on this video is more than enough for us. But if you want to do a bit more, hit that like button. That will give us a big smile. Comment below. Let us know what you think about Mohammed Ben Sulayem. Does Ben need to go? I think the only answer is yes. But until then, stay safe. Thank you very much for watching, and speak to you next time.